Imagine a young man who, even with a physical deformity, defied the greatest academic obstacles of his time. A man who, at just 23 years old, proved that E, the basis of natural logarithms, was not just a number, but a transcendental concept. This is the story of Charles Hermite, the mathematician who turned challenges into discoveries that shaped modern mathematics. His work on function theory includes the application of elliptic functions to the quintic equation. He published the first proof that E is a transcendental number. Get ready for an inspiring journey through the life and legacy of a true pioneer of science.
Charles Hermite was born on December 24, 1822, in Dieuze, Lorraine, France, and died on January 14, 1901, in Paris.
The Greatest Mathematicians of All Time. Episode 11. Charles Hermite.
Charles Hermite's father was Ferdinand Hermite, and his mother was Madeleine Lallemande. Ferdinand Hermite was an engineer and worked in this capacity at a salt mine near Dieuze. After marrying Madeleine, he entered the trade of cloth merchant, in which her family was involved. However, he was an artistic man who always wanted to pursue an artistic career. He asked his wife to take care of the cloth merchant's business, and he devoted himself to art. Charles was the sixth of his parents' 7 children. He was born with a malformation in his right foot, described as a congenital clubfoot, which made it difficult for him to move. Because of this, he later faced lifelong motor limitations and needed special authorization to complete the École Polytechnique exams, as he was unable to participate in the mandatory military activities required of students. When she was about 7 years old, her parents left Dieuze and went to live in Nancy, where the business had moved. Education was not a high priority for Charles's parents, but although they were not very interested in their children's education, they provided them with a good education. Charles attended the Collège de Nancy and then went to Paris, where he attended the Collège Henri. In 1840, he studied at the Collège Louis le Grand, where Galois had studied about 15 years earlier.
In fact, he was taught mathematics there by Louis Richard, who had taught Galois. In some respects, Hermite was similar to Galois in that he preferred to read articles by Euler, Gauss, and Lagrange rather than work towards her formal examinations. If Hermite neglected the studies on which he should have concentrated, he was showing remarkable research ability by publishing 2 papers while at Louis le Grand. Also, like Galois, he was attracted to the problem of solving algebraic equations, and one of the 2 papers attempted to show that quintica cannot be solved in radicals. That he was unfamiliar with Galois' contributions, despite being at the same school, is not at all surprising, since the mathematical community was unaware of them at that time. However, he could reasonably have known of Ruffini and Abel's contributions to this issue, but apparently did not. Like Galois, Hermite wanted to study at the École Polytechnique and took a year preparing for the exams. He was Catalan's tutor in 1841-42, and certainly Hermite did better than Galois had done to get him through. However, it was not a glorious approval, as he only reached the 68th place on the ordered list. After a year at the École Polytechnique, Hermite was denied the right to continue her studies due to her disability. Clearly, this was an unfair decision, and some important people were prepared to take up his case and fight for him to have the right to continue as a student at the École Polytechnique. The decision was reversed so that he could continue his studies, but strict conditions were imposed. Hermite did not find these conditions acceptable and decided that she would not graduate from the École Polytechnique.
Hermite befriended important mathematicians at this time and frequently visited Joseph Bertrand. On a personal note, This was highly significant, as he would marry Joseph Bertrand's sister. More significantly, from a mathematical point of view, he began to correspond with Jacobi, and although he did not shine in his formal education, he was already producing research that classified him as a world-class mathematician. The letters he exchanged with Jacobi show that Hermite had discovered some differential equations satisfied by theta functions, and that he was using Fourier series to study them. He had found general solutions to the equations in terms of theta functions. Hermite may have still been an undergraduate, but it is likely that his ideas from around 1843 helped Liouville to his important results from 1844, which include the result now known as Liouville's theorem. After spending 5 years working towards his degree, he took and passed the examinations for his baccalaureate and license, which were awarded to him in 1847. The following year, he was appointed to the École Polytechnique, the institution that had tried to prevent him from continuing his studies some 4 years earlier. He was appointed repetitor and admission examiner. Hermite made important contributions to number theory and algebra, orthogonal polynomials, and elliptic functions. He discovered his most significant mathematical results over the 10 years following his appointment to the École Polytechnique. In 1848, he proved that doubly periodic functions can be represented as quotients of integer periodic functions. In 1849, he submitted a memoir to the Académie des Sciences, applying Cauchy's West techniques to doubly periodic functions. Sturm and Cauchy wrote a good report on this memoir in 1851, but a priority dispute with Liouville seems to have prevented its publication. Another topic on which Hermite worked and made important contributions was the theory of quadratic forms. This led him to study invariant theory, and he found a law of reciprocity related to binary forms. With his understanding of quadratic forms and invariant theory, he created a theory of transformations in 1855. His results on this topic provided connections between number theory, theta functions, and the transformations of abelian functions.
On 14th July 1856, Hermite was elected to the Académie des Sciences. However, despite this achievement, 1856 was a bad year for Hermite, as he contracted smallpox. It was Cauchy who, with his strong religious conviction, helped Hermite overcome the crisis. This had a profound effect on Hermite, who, under Cauchy's influence, turned to the Roman Catholic religion. Cauchy was also a very staunch monarchist, and Hermite was influenced by him to also become a monarchist. We have made comparisons with Galois earlier, but with royalist views, Hermite was now completely opposed to the views that the staunch Republican Galois had advocated. The next mathematical result of Hermite that we should mention is the one for which he is rightly famous. Although an algebraic equation of the fifth degree cannot be solved in radicals, a result that was proved by Ruffini and Abel, Hermite showed in 1858 that an algebraic equation of the fifth degree could be solved using elliptic functions. He applied these results to number theory, in particular to class number relations of quadratic forms. In 1862, Hermite was appointed maître de conférence at the École Polytechnique, a position that had been created especially for him. The following year, he became an examiner there. In 1869, he became a professor, succeeding Duhamel as professor of analysis at the École Polytechnique and the Sorbonne. Hermite resigned the chair at the École Polytechnique in 1876, but continued to hold it at the Sorbonne until he retired in 1997. In the 1890s, Hermite became much less interested in the new results found by the mathematicians of the next generation. The 1870s saw Hermite return to problems that had interested him early in his career, such as problems concerning approximation and interpolation. In 1873, Hermite published the first proof that E is a transcendental number. Using methods similar to Hermite's, Lindemann established in 1882 that pi was also transcendental.
Many historians of science regret that Hermite, despite having done most of the hard work, did not use it to prove the result that would have brought her fame outside the world of mathematics. Hermite is now best known for a number of mathematical entities that bear his name: Hermite polynomials, Hermite differential equation, Hermite interpolation formula, and Hermitian matrices. For Hermite, certain areas of mathematics were much more interesting than others. Hadamard, who, unlike his teacher Hermite, worked in all areas of mathematics, spoke of Hermite's distaste for geometry. He had a kind of positive hatred for geometry, and once curiously reproached me for having written a book of geometric memoirs. Hermite's great passion was for analysis, and unsurprisingly, he had great respect for Weierstrass. When Mittag Leffler arrived in Paris to study with him, Hermite received him warmly, but said, "You made a mistake, sir." He was to follow Weierstrass's course in Berlin. He is the master of us all. Poincaré is almost certainly the best known of Hermite's students. He once suggested that Hermite's mind was not logically processed. He wrote, "But to call Hermite logical, nothing seems to me more contrary to the truth. The methods always seem to be born in his mind in some mysterious way." Like Poincaré, Hadamard was very interested in the way mathematics was discovered. He also said the following about the way Hermite made his discoveries. Hermite used to observe that biology can be a very useful study even for mathematicians, as hidden and eventually fruitful analogies can appear between processes in both types of studies.
Hadamard had great respect for Hermite as a teacher. He said, "I do not believe that those who have never heard him can realize how magnificent Hermite's teachings were, overflowing with enthusiasm for science, which seemed to come to life in his voice, and whose beauty he never ceased to communicate to us, for he felt it deeply in himself, in the depths of his being." Hermite was impressing us deeply, not only with her methods and those of Weierstrass, but also with her enthusiasm and love of science. In our brief but fruitful conversations, Hermite loved to address me with remarks such as, "He who deviates from the paths traced by Providence falls." These were the words of a deeply religious man, but an atheist like me understood them very well, especially when he added on other occasions, "In mathematics, our role is more that of servant than master." Needless to say, gradually as the years and my scientific work unfolded, I came to understand more and more deeply the appropriateness and scope of his words. Cross, reviewing 125 letters from Hermite to Mittag Leffler, are reproduced, writes, "Thus he reveals himself to be one of the most engaging and influential men of Parisian and French mathematics in the second half of the 19th century. One could even say that he was the central character of the period in which he published, from 1842 to 1901. What radiates from the text is his humility, his Catholicism, his concern for his family, his willingness to fight for colleagues whose merit he recognizes, and his devotion to family, merit, and principles rather than simple influence." In terms of family life, Hermite married Louise Bertrand, sister of Joseph Bertrand. One of his two daughters married Émile Picard. Struck writes, "Hermite lived a retired life with her family. His work schedule was dedicated to research and the teaching of mathematics. His view of mathematics was realistic in the Platonic sense. A mathematician, like a naturalist, discovers an external world, in his case, a world of ideas. Hermite therefore disliked Cantor's world, in which a new mathematical world was created." Charles Hermite died at the age of 78 at his home in Paris, but the specific cause of his death is not detailed in historical records.
Charles Hermite showed us that the greatest challenges can be stepping stones to the greatest discoveries. His life is a testament to the power of perseverance and a passion for truth. If you were inspired by his story, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with friends who also believe that mathematics is more than numbers. It is a universal language that connects us all. Together, we will continue to explore the legacy of the great scientists who shaped our world.